If you love spine-chilling stories, you've come to the right place. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow, and leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. Let us know if you keep a doll like this around, or throw it out immediately. Let's get started. It all began when Ellie and her family moved into an old, creaky house at the edge of town. The house had a certain charm, but it was clear it hadn't been lived in for years. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs hung like delicate curtains from the ceilings. Ellie, an adventurous 12-year-old, couldn't resist exploring every inch of her new home. "Mom, can I check out the attic?" Ellie asked as she tugged on the ladder leading to the house's uppermost level. "Sure, just be careful up there," her mom called from the kitchen. The attic was dimly lit and smelled of mildew and forgotten memories. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, and old furniture was draped in white sheets. Ellie's flashlight beam danced across the room, finally landing on a wooden chest in the far corner. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. She hesitated for a moment before walking over. Something about the chest felt off, but curiosity won out, and she opened the lid with a loud creak. Inside, nestled among yellowed newspapers and moth-eaten blankets, was a doll. It wasn't just any doll. This one had porcelain skin, rosy cheeks, and bright blue eyes that seemed to glisten even in the dim light. Its hair was golden and curled, and it wore a lacy white dress that looked too clean compared to everything else in the attic. The doll's expression was serene, but Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her. "Creepy," she muttered, but she picked it up anyway. The moment her fingers touched the doll, a strange chill ran down her spine. She brushed it off as nerves and brought the doll downstairs to show her mom. "Look what I found," Ellie said, holding up the doll. Her mom glanced at it and frowned. "That is a little unsettling, don't you think?" "It's just a doll," Ellie replied, shrugging. Her mom didn't argue, but insisted the doll stay in Ellie's room instead of the living room. "I don't want that thing staring at me while I'm watching TV," she joked, though her tone carried a hint of seriousness. That night, Ellie placed the doll on her bookshelf before climbing into bed. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought she heard faint whispers, but she dismissed them as the house settling. Around 2 a.m., she woke up abruptly. Her room was cold, much colder than it should have been. She glanced at the bookshelf and froze. The doll was no longer sitting upright. It was slumped over, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Did I leave it like that?" she whispered to herself. Too tired to care, Ellie got up, adjusted the doll, and went back to bed. But the uneasy feeling lingered. The next morning, she told her mom about the doll's strange position. "Maybe you bumped the bookshelf," her mom suggested. Ellie nodded, though she didn't think that was the case. The day passed without incident, but as night fell, the unsettling energy returned. Ellie woke up again in the middle of the night, this time to the sound of soft footsteps. Her heart pounded as she reached for her flashlight. She shone the beam across the room and gasped. The doll was no longer on the bookshelf. Instead, it was sitting on her desk, its blue eyes staring straight at her. "How did you get there?" Ellie whispered, her voice trembling. "Do you think she should have ignored it or gotten rid of the doll right then? Let us know in the comments." She gathered her courage and picked up the doll, placing it back on the shelf. This time, she made sure it was secure before climbing back into bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Ellie would find the doll in different positions or places around her room. Once, she came home from school to find it sitting on her bed, its head turned toward the window. Another time, it was on her dresser, facing the mirror. Her mom began to notice things too. Lights would flicker, and objects would move on their own. "Ellie, are you playing pranks?" she asked one evening. "No, I swear," Ellie insisted. "It's the doll." Her mom gave her a skeptical look, but didn't push the issue. One night, Ellie's mom decided enough was enough. "We're putting that doll back in the attic," she said firmly. Relieved, Ellie agreed. Together, They placed the doll back in the chest and locked it. But that night, Ellie had a nightmare. In the dream, the doll stood at the foot of her bed, whispering her name in a voice that sounded like shattered glass. When she woke up, she was drenched in sweat. She glanced around the room, expecting to see the doll. It wasn't there. She sighed in relief until she heard a soft thud from the hallway. "Mom," she called out. No response. She crept out of bed and opened her door. The hallway was dark and silent, but something glimmered at the far end. Ellie stepped closer and froze. The doll was sitting there, its head tilted, as if mocking her. From that moment on, the house felt different. Shadows seemed to linger longer, and whispers became more frequent. One evening, Ellie's mom found a note on the kitchen counter, written in a childlike scrawl. "You can't get rid of me." "Ellie, did you write this?" her mom asked, holding up the note. "No, I didn't," Ellie shouted, tears streaming down her face. Her mom's face paled. We need help." They contacted a local historian who specialized in haunted objects. When he arrived, he examined the doll carefully. "This doll was made over 100 years ago," he said. "It belonged to a little girl named Clara. She didn't have a peaceful life." "What do you mean?" Ellie asked, her voice trembling. The historian hesitated. "Clara was neglected. Her only companion was this doll. When she passed, it said her spirit attached itself to it. Clara's anger and loneliness are what you're experiencing." "How do we stop it?" her mom demanded. The historian shook his head. "You can't destroy it. You have to release her spirit. But be warned, it won't be easy." The family followed the historian's instructions. They held a small ceremony in the attic, placing the doll back in the chest and surrounding it with lavender and salt. As they recited a prayer, the room grew icy cold. The whispers turned into screams, and the chest rattled violently. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the room fell silent. The chill lifted, and the doll lay still. "Is it over?" Ellie whispered. The historian nodded. "I think so, but keep the chest sealed, just in case." From that night on, the house returned to normal. The lights stopped flickering, and the whispers vanished. But Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's presence still lingered, watching, waiting. So, what would you have done if you were Ellie? Would you have dared to keep the doll, or gotten rid of it immediately? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe or follow for more hair-raising tales.